2006. We're now investing out of our third fund. Across the three funds, we manage about $1 billion. Prior to Matrix, I was a management consultant. Before that, I was an operator myself. At Matrix, I've had investments across mobility, B2B, e-commerce, Fintech, and I also have an operating team now. I want to thank Shantanu for doing this. Shantanu is someone we've known for a long time now. I think Shantanu used to be based in India. Was an advisor to many companies that we were evaluating back in 2012 when the Bombay ecosystem was taking off. Since then, he's now moved to the Valley. He spends his time across the Valley and Asia, and he advises companies on multiple things largely related to legal and mostly focused on startups. The reason we thought we'd do this was CapTables is a topic that many people are interested in, especially as they're starting out. There's going to be lots of questions that people will have. The way we thought we'd structure this conversation is I have 4 or 5 questions that I'd like to start with Shantanu. So I'm going to fire away with those questions to begin with. We'll have a more free-flowing conversation for about, call it 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up to Q&A with people who have questions on CapTables. So that's broadly the agenda. If anyone would like to kind of share questions in advance, then I think there's 2 colleagues of ours, there's Shantanu and there's Sehgal. We'll make sure that they come around, and if you want to just jot your questions down, then that's great. Otherwise, if you'd like to just put your hand up at the end, then that's fine too. Okay. Shantanu, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. First off, I think, what is the significance of a cap table? Why is it important? And how is it different in India versus the US?
Sure. Right. Thanks, Rajinder, and thanks everybody for showing up. I know Monday evening's not really popular, particularly in heavy traffic time. So thanks again for coming. So as Rajinder mentioned, I was in India. I like to think I was one of the first folks involved in the ecosystem here since 2007. I'm now back in the US in the Valley. I'm a corporate lawyer from KWM, based in Palo Alto Menlo Park area, which many of you will know that's sort of the epicenter of the startup scene, at least in Silicon Valley. But I've been involved in the cross-border scene for 10, 15 plus years between US and India. I'm licensed in New York, California, the UK, and I'm also licensed as an advocate here in India. So US, UK, India, so I can practice across the spectrum. That's why I focus on the cross-border space. But just to address Rajinder's question, the topic at hand is cap tables. And I think when I proposed the topic, it's quite interesting. I actually got a fair amount of interest in this. We always think that, frankly, people don't necessarily want to hear lawyers talk. They'd much rather hear investors speak. But I found that this was a topic that I feel that people really wanted to understand, because there's so much mystique around a cap table and how you structure a cap table that has an outsized effect on your company and therefore your life. And it's sort of one of these things that has to be structured correctly. But it's amazing that even people with the best of world-class resources and infinite amounts of money sometimes manage to stumble. I mean, I'll give you an example that we're all familiar with. WeWork, right? $47 billion valuation to $7 billion valuation, right? So clearly, despite having all the money in the world and all the best experts in the world, it's still possible to stumble. But that being said, there's sort of a best practice in how cap tables should be structured and what is there around that. So at the very outset, what is a cap table? Clearly, it's some kind of a table. You can do it on Excel or any other spreadsheet you want. Excel is pretty popular. In the US, we also have a number of software providers that are pretty popular. You can go online and see any of these. In India, I don't know if anyone, do people here use it?
There are a few companies, yeah.
Okay.
But most people just use Excel.
Okay, right. And in the US, now 1 or 2 companies have really taken off in terms of sort of helping manage cap tables. But there's no right or wrong in that. Whatever works for you is the right approach. But fundamentally, it is the way that you decide the equity in the company. But it's more than that. It's the story of the company. And in fact, and the reason lawyers get very involved in the cap table is because the cap table is based on legal documents. And I think this is, to your point, is what is the difference? What are some key differences? Because now I've been in both. I was in Silicon Valley, then I came to India, now I'm back in Silicon Valley, and I'm kind of back and forth. But one of the key differences I see is that the lawyers are heavily involved in cap tables in the US. Here, I think CapTable is probably much more of CFO or the founder is more involved in that. There, they tend to be a little bit hands-off on that approach. But I think before we get into that, I want to just tell you about three terminologies that I think everybody should understand in CapTable. So one is pro forma CapTable. So probably maybe you've heard of this word pro forma, Latin term. And basically what it means, matter of form, right? Pro forma simply means that when you're doing the cap table, you're basically planning the cap table as if a transaction has occurred. So when in the legal world, when we say a cap table, we say that that's as if fully diluted, basis, right? So fully diluted, which you would have heard of, is fully diluted as converted basis means that every transaction, everything that could have occurred has been accounted for in this cap table. All your stock options, all your warrants, convertible notes, all your promissory notes, whatever it is that you set out, stock options, etc., has been sort of taken into account in this cap table. That's the fully diluted. So the pro forma is basically as if some transactions happen. So you in an SPA, for example, you'll have a pre-transaction cap table and then the post-transaction cap table, right? So the pro forma is basically telling you what the cap table will look like post-transaction. The other thing that's very important is the pre-money and post-money valuation. So you have the investor here who basically determine the valuation. But essentially, when you're doing that valuation, then it's when you look at that cap table and determine is that you're doing it on the pre-money valuation or the post-money valuation. So when you're doing this cap table, you'll also have different types of cap tables that you'll analyze the pre-money and the post-money cap table valuation.
Quick follow-up on this one. So in the US, you have common practice of rounds getting structured more as safe notes. Whereas in India, it tends to be largely priced rounds. How does that affect the cap table and what's your advice on this?
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. I think one of the things in the US is that, just in my experience, rounds tend to happen very quickly in the US. And part of that, I think, is always the ecosystem is fairly mature. The other is the legal documents have actually been slimmed down to a large extent. Typically it's the three basic instruments you find in the US. Convertible notes, safes, and then something called KISS, K-I-S-S, which is kind of almost similar to a safe in a way. Safes really became popular in the last 3 or 4 years. You didn't hear about them before that. It was popularized by one of the famous incubators and accelerators in the US. It's also almost geographic that convertible notes are actually more popular on the East Coast, and safes are more popular on the West Coast. And that may be a little bit broad, but that's kind of what you see. You don't see that many safes actually outside Silicon Valley. For some reason, I think it's just more of a Silicon Valley thing. But you can still have a cap table with a convertible note. The issue is that when you do the cap table, you will not be able to necessarily determine the number of shares that is going to be attributed to that safe or convertible note, simply because usually what happens, the purpose of the safe, convertible note, case, etc., is actually to kick what we call kick the can down the road, right? You're basically pushing off that valuation discussion for another day, right? And the reason why actually it's probably good for both parties in some way is because it is hard to determine a valuation at a very early stage of the company. And what is a valuation determined on? It's determined on several factors, like revenues, total addressable market, customer base, et cetera, right? And product. And a lot of these, if it's too early, it's very hard to figure out any of those things. Now, certainly there are some star founders who had previous exits. They'll command a higher valuation just from day one, just because of who they are. But generally, it is very hard to determine that valuation, and therefore, the practice, at least in the US, typically has been to kick the can down the road. I know India is probably less common, and typically there's more of an insistence on pure valuation, sort of, you're going to peg it at a certain amount. I'm not sure it's, maybe it's a cultural thing also, that people want to know exactly what they're getting. I mean, there's some element of what's behind the door in a convertible note or a safe, because there isn't a valuation, right? Now, there are ways that an investor can protect themselves. Like, for example, you can have a valuation cap, for example, that basically the valuation will basically be capped at a certain level, and if the valuation goes above that, then the investor actually benefits. So those are some things we do see in the value, that you can have
you're taking it to that basically, okay, we won't have a valuation, we will cap it at a certain amount, and that's investor side protection, right? The investor actually will benefit from having a valuation cap on that front. You have a discount ratio, right? So you have a discount to the convertible note, typically 10 to 30% is what you typically see, just for that risk reward of an investor has invested in the company and therefore gets this discount. But typically the profile of somebody doing either a convertible note, say for a case is going to be an angel investor or a quasi-institutional accelerator, incubator, that sort of thing. VC fund typically going to do something like that.
And just to complete the flow, technically how are these three instruments different? Are they different at all, or is it just nomenclature?
No, they are actually legally different also. And again, apologies if this is more in the US context, because they don't necessarily translate entirely into India. Although there is some elements of doing that. For example, in India, we call it convertible note. In India, I've seen the use of convertible debenture. The term debenture is used much more. And also when you have, I've run into this issue when you have, for example, an Indian company and you're taking money from overseas. So a note is essentially a debt instrument, right? It's essentially that's what it is. And the problem is if you are an Indian company taking debt from a foreign party, the issue is can you pay that debt back to a foreign party? The answer, at least from what I have experienced, is no. And so an actual convertible note has to be what they call a fully convertible note into India, right? So it cannot be a note that technically can be paid back. So you must structure it as a fully convertible note. That's one slight nuance when you're dealing with a foreign investor. They have to be structured as a fully convertible note, otherwise there are problems with that structure. If you're dealing with a domestic investor, I think you have a lot more flexibility to structure it as a note. And essentially, it is different from, say, for a KISS because it is a debt instrument, essentially, right? It is a promise to pay back money at a certain point in time. There's a maturity date, typically 1 to 3 years is going to be the maturity date. There's going to be an interest component also. And then there's going to be some conversion criteria, threshold. There's something that will cause that convertible note to convert into equity, right? And typically it's going to be the next round of financing, right? That's typically what it's, and there's actually three outcomes, right? Next round of financing, and there will be some kind of metrics. So the next round of financing has to be above a certain amount, 1 million, 2 million, something like that dollars in order for this to actually work. A small bridge round won't count, for example. The second would be some kind of acquisition offer. For example, suddenly you've got an acquisition offer, then the note holder will convert. The third would be a maturity event, where basically, eventually, after 3 years, they just pay the note holder back with the interest, right? And typically, in the venture scenario, nobody really wants to get their money back in the sense that people are investing in these really to convert into equity, right? This can be distinguished from a SAFE, which stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity, right? And so it's this hybrid instrument where technically it's not really a debt in some way, but basically it's an agreement saying that I'm going to give you money and it's going to be an agreement that will allow me to get equity in the company. In the same way, the sort of wrinkle or loophole is what if the company never raises money? What happens? Right? At least in the note, you can call the note and get your money back. In the safe, that is a sort of wrinkle in the safe. Now, the reality is, again, most people who invest in safes are again looking for a conversion, right? And they're usually experienced angel investors who are investing in many startups. They're not really looking to get money paid back in the same way. But that's sort of the technical legal definition. One is a really sort of almost a debt instrument. The other is not really a debt instrument. I've not seen states or anything you've been described as market, whether it's used in India that much. I know there's something called an iSafe. I know one of the VCs here has authorized that. I don't know if you see this in your general market.
Not to say that, but I do know Sanjay and a couple of people who are authorizing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So some people are authorizing it. It remains to be seen where it goes.
So switching gears to the India context, many people here will be hopefully preparing a CapTable pretty soon as they build their company. What should the ideal CapTable have? Like, what are some of the basic mistakes to avoid? Now, obviously, I'm not referring to simple things like just getting the math wrong, which, by the way, lots of people do all the time. But aside from just getting the math wrong, what are the big blocks of what one should have in the CapTable and what one doesn't really need to kind of reflect?
Yeah. No, this is a very good question. I mean, I think the the biggest thing about the cap table is that it really needs to reflect the story of the company. You see many times that, look, when companies start, everything's chaotic, and people are making promises to other people that are not documented or not backed up by anything. And again, I can give you the biggest example in the world. If any of you saw the movie The Social Contract, the entire movie was about a promise for a certain amount of equity in Facebook, right? So even in the U.S., a sophisticated market where you created a very large, one of the largest companies in the world, this sort of thing happens all the time. So it's not unheard of that basically there are promises made and people come out of the woodwork later on saying, hey, you promised me, we met at a bar one night and you wrote down a napkin I get 2% of the company. I'm going to come back with my 2%, where is it? So you do see this. So it's very important that all these things be documented. So I think that is one of the key sort of elements to stakes, is that it's all documented, and it's hard because initially everybody's friends or your family members or investors or whatever, but there is some element of formality because future investors like Matrix are going to want, they don't want a surprise. They don't want somebody to come out of the woodwork and say, hi, where's my 5% of the company. The other thing that's very interesting is that as it relates to CapTable, the math problem is people typically talk about percentages of the company, and for a lawyer it's always very problematic to talk about percentages because percentages of when against who. Who's diluted, right? And this again was a social contract, right? You remember the whole problem was that the plaintiff, Mr. Sovereign, claimed that he was diluted. He was promised a certain amount of equity, and he was completely diluted, right? And then what he got was much less than what he was promised, right? So they actually had a court case to settle. But the key to that whole thing is that when you are talking about a percentage, it's when we're talking about the percentage. This also goes to the whole issue of ESOP, because we see this again as another particular issue, because typically the VC will come in and then say, well, you need to carve out the ESOP. Now the issue is if you've not thought of that or allocated some element of that, it's going to come out of the founder stock, right? So this is another area where you see debates about, when the founder of the ESOP pool will come out of, right? Because typically the VC will say, well, you need to incentivize future employees. Typically, at least in the US context, 8 to 15% is kind of a typical ESOP pool. If you haven't thought about that, then it's going to be an issue as to when that dilution effect happens, right? So that's one of the key issues around that. And I think the other thing to think about is just, again, the formality around all the documentation of all of this is very important.
So I think most of this sounds pretty straightforward. What are the big mistakes, other than you're not documenting things? What are big mistakes that people make? Is it more to do with how they don't capture things series-wise, or what are some of the big mistakes you've seen?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So I was talking more at a very early stage. As you get into later and later rounds, for example, I'm doing a Series F now. And a Series F typically can be north of $100, $200 million, right? So that sort of level, all these factors become compounded because you have, all the way to Series F, you have A, B, C, D, right? Plus you have seed round and you have major round before that. So then your spreadsheet or your Excel sheet or cap table becomes very complex, and you have layers upon layers of scenarios and basically preferences. To your point, is each VC will have a particular series, and then there will be a particular preference about it. When you're talking about liquidation preference, for example, this is the way it's typically calculated with this next scenario is there's a liquidation preference, and typically, 1 to 2x, 2x is probably extreme, let's say 1x, 1 to 2x, something like that. Then you also have what they call participating preferred. So I don't know if you see that in India as well.
I mean, we see it, but we don't believe in it. We don't ask for it from founders, and we don't give it or advise our founders to do it.
Got it. So I just explained what it is. It's nice that Matrix doesn't impose it. It is something you do see maybe from others in the market, but certainly in the US context you see it. But essentially, when you have a participating preferred, the VC will get their 1x or whatever. Let's say they put in 5 million, they'll get their 5 and then their 1x upon a liquidation event. Plus, they will convert into common stock or equity shares in India, and then they will participate again on a pro rata basis. So basically, they're double dipping. And I see this a lot where I think a terms of the structuring and the exit. When you get into later rounds, one of the things that you as a founder can do is map this out in terms of the exit scenarios and what it takes in terms of an exit. And this plays out a very live example in terms of the valuation, right? Because if the valuation is too high, for example, when you've taken money earlier on, the valuation is too high, and then end up with a down round later on, there's a huge anti-dilution impact on the company. And again, this impacts the cap table because now the numbers change. And the investors actually end up with more, and the founders end up with less. And sometimes the ESOP or employees end up holding the bag, and the bag has nothing in it. And so, again, I go back to a WeWork's example, right? So it's questionable whether the employees will get it. There are any examples. Even Uber today, I think is trading at $25 and I can do it at $45, right? So you have examples in the market live that employees who were there, offered shares at a certain value, they're under what they call underwater, and so they're basically their shares are not worth much at this particular point. And those are public companies now. If you have a private company, it's the same impact. Then it becomes very difficult to retain employees at that point. So it's very important to understand impacts of what I would say liquidation preference and exit scenarios around liquidation preference. Basically stacks upon stacks of liquidation preference. And basically, usually, what I say in the later rounds is there's always kind of a jostling among the investors as to sort of map out the exit and what they require, because each investor has a certain IRR that they want. And it's very interesting in terms of the way it works. But a venture investor who comes in earlier will have a different IRR than a PE investor who comes in later. Right? So the venture investor is taking the risk. He's coming in earlier. He wants a 10x. PE investor is okay with a 2x or 3x or something like that. He's coming in later. But all that is kind of mapped out in sort of exit scenarios and ways of exiting, and also who can determine an exit and who can block an exit. For example, whether it's a cheap exit, can somebody block a cheap exit? And that also gets played out in board dynamics. This isn't necessarily a cap table issue, but you will also have each investor will typically have a board seat, and then that also kind of maps out around the exit scenario.
I think we should open it up for a few questions. Or do you have anything that I should be asked and put on the hot seat for a change?
In terms of question, what is it that, for example, I think Matrix is I see the word founder friendly in the Matrix sort of materials. So maybe explain what that means in the terms of this context. You explain that you don't take participant incurred, so on X. So what else? I mean, typically as a lawyer, we typically see anti-dilution. You have preemptive rights. You have protected provisions. So I assume those are standard asks for EIPC.
Yeah, I would say the big ones are obviously, first of all, liquidation preference. I think we've spoken of that. It's 1x trade. Don't ask for anything more. I don't believe any founder should give anything more. When it comes to anti-dilution, most term sheets will have one broad-based weighted average, narrow-based or full graduate. Again, broad-based weighted average is what we recommend most founders to take. When it comes to rights, most investors, early-stage investors, will ask for a pro-rata right for the ability to continue to invest in the company as the company scales. I think that's fair to give for someone who's coming in early. As long as they continue to participate in future rounds at higher and higher valuations, it's only good for the founder. It's a strong stimulating effect. And then the rest of the rights, I would say broadly, there are affirmative bold items which are detailed out in the back of the term sheet, or when it comes to documents, they will be detailed at the back. There, I would say what we recommend again is it generally makes sense at an early stage for these ABIs to basically be granted to investors. Once you come to later stages, once you have many investors, some investors having very small percentage shareholding, some having very significant percentage shareholding, then the concept of thresholds does come into account. Again, when you have multiple investors, the best way to set up the company for the future is to have some version of an investor, qualified investor majority when it comes to voting on some of these ABI items. So I'd say these are the broad principles with which, but that's more of a term sheet discussion rather than a cap table discussion. My request is, my partners have actually put up a page, and I actually did a podcast recently on term sheets. I would definitely recommend you're going to have that, and if you have more questions on term sheets, happy to answer them later. But on cap tables, maybe we open it up, and for people who have questions, Shantanu, All the hard questions, easy questions this way.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hello, this is Himanshu. So, what I heard from you about CapTable, it sounded more mysterious than a simple table. So if I make a, let's say, very naive assumption that for a given situation, there is a possibility of different interpretations and a possibility of more than one CapTable for a given situation. Does that make sense? So, because you talk about layering and
I would say it's yes. The answer is yes and no. You actually want one actual cap table, but the thing is, you can have several versions of a pro forma cap table. What I mean by that is kind of what we were alluding to is different scenarios based on a different valuation, for example, right? So, for example, on a different valuation, the cap table might be slightly different, right, in terms of percentages, or if your ESOP is at a certain level versus another level, or if one founder leaves the company, for example. So you can have different sort of what I would call pro forma types of the cap table based on particular scenarios. But at the same time, eventually you want one legally binding cap table because that is the actual reality of the company, right? But I think you can have different versions. Again, I would make sure you call it a pro forma that, to capture a particular scenario.
If I could just break it down into an Excel template for you, you need to have, there are three big variables that change the cap table. One is, of course, your pre-money valuation. This is for a price, right? So one is your pre-money valuation. Two is who are the investors and how much are they investing. And then three is what does the cap table look like today? Because what most people forget is they just focus on the first two. What they forget is the third part. So you don't actually know the number of shares that are outstanding as on date, because your price per share and everything else gets derived from there. So I have seen multiple examples of situations where founders have said that, oh, we have 1 lakh shares outstanding, and that's what's been issued out for founders, and we've carved out something for ESOP. And then when you later on do some basic diligence, you realize that it wasn't 1 lakh, it's actually 1,15,000. And then it strikes them that, oh, you know what, we actually issued out these shares to one other departing co-founder, but he's left the company, and there are all sorts of issues that you then need to take into account. So three big blocks. Everything else drives from there. Once you've arrived at what the price per share is, you can quickly impute for each investor who's investing fresh capital into the company, how many shares are they being held, and from there you basically are able to calculate that percentage ownership. So my suggestion to everyone is just simple. What's the pre-money? How many investors? Who's investing how much? And what does the cap table look like today with actual number of outstanding shares clearly reflected by shareholder in the cap table?
Just one more thing on the cap table that I wanted to talk about was I see a lot of recapitalization. And what I mean by that is that companies, and you have some of your portfolio, that essentially flip or move their jurisdiction of incorporation for various reasons. And I see this as an increasing trend for certain types of companies. For example, certain companies reincorporate in Singapore for various reasons become a very popular jurisdiction now. A certain B2B SaaS is a very hot sort of area for investors, and a lot of those companies do reincorporate in the U.S. in Delaware in particular. So we often get calls about an Indian company which is incorporated in India, and now because they're planning, they can always do a B2B SaaS play, and they want to reincorporate it in the U.S. in particular. So then how do we recreate that cap table? So for example, the math is slightly different in India versus 1 lakh shares. In the US, we have a slightly different model in terms of that. And then there are RBI questions in terms of how to recreate the cap table, particularly for Indian tax residents, how do we get their shares in a US company. So there's some complexity around flipping that structure. And just in general, if somebody is planning to flip the structure, it's better to do it earlier than later, because the longer you delay it, then it's almost impossible to flip it.
Other questions? We have extra mics, but can we make these ones?
Hi, Shantanu, this is Deepak I want to understand, particularly with regard to the liquidation preference, what you actually mentioned. In the case of a company where the cash flows are absolutely dwindling and the cash flows are not good, the company is absolutely on a downturn, and looking at the fact that there are already some other creditors or debts which are there in the books, and there's a liquidation loss of that company, where do you actually secure the interest of investors and where does the capital stands in case if the company is absolutely down?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. It's interesting because liquidation is used in multiple, it has multiple definitions, right? So in the old days, pre-venture capital liquidation really meant the company was being liquidated, it was dissolved, it was in bad shape, and basically their creditors, and basically to liquidate the entire thing, right? I think what's happened in the venture capital context is that we're now talking about an exit, right? So it's become used as an exit or liquidation event, deemed liquidation event, you'll see in the legal documents. And that's usually around a trade sale or M&A exit, right? And basically people are now arguing about, how much they'll get when the going is good, right? In a positive environment, right? In a down cycle or negative environment, I think it's worse. But you're right. I think the key question then is how much liquidation is there to really argue about, right? And remember, the liquidation preference for a shareholder will always come behind a debt holder, right? So again, it comes to other creditors who are debt holders. So they're going to get the first amount, and particularly even convertible note holders, for example, they may be senior and call in the note ahead of shareholders who have a liquidation preference. So I think at that stage, if it really comes to that, companies spiral downwards very quickly, and to the point where there's just probably not much left. When I've seen those situations, it usually becomes what they call a fire sale, and usually at that point what happens is the assets are sold. So typically, for example, in the value unit in India, if it's a tech company, what's the value of the team? The team, mistakes could happen, the market wasn't there, whatever, it happens. But usually the team is very good, and if the team is good, then they usually, they'll get an actual higher offer. I see this all the time, at least in the Valley, where engineering talent is in short supply and high demand, right? So any good team who's come from a top-tier company, a startup, didn't work out, they'll usually kind of get a second chance where there's an asset sale and an actual hire. And so what happens in that case is that the IP or the team will somehow be called into some kind of a sale. And so it may be the case that, frankly, the investors don't get much back, but at least there's a happy story. Remember, this is the venture world, right? People want to, you want to show them you have some kind of an exit. So typically, that's what I've seen in resolution. Now, in a hardcore liquidation, where it's not a tech company, it's a little bit different than that.
In that case, most of the investors then look on for convertible options, where the debt option is also there for them to secure their downfall.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about a venture type fund, they won't do debt instruments, right? A venture investor will always do preference share. So I'm talking about the earlier stage investors.
Maybe we take one or two more, and then I think there's other topics that people want to discuss. Yeah? I think there's a gentleman behind you.
Hi, my name is Raj, and a question for both of you. For companies which are moving beyond seed towards Series A and setting up ESOP pools, any advice you have of how that can be designed so that when the Series A guy comes in, or when folks like yourself come in and look at it with a magnifying glass, you find everything as it should be? So some best practices on setting up ESOP.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, create the ESOP pool. I think Shantanu's already given you a rough sense of what it looks like in the Valley. I'd say that's not very far away from what it looks like in India, although it depends a little bit on what the founding team, the composition is like. So in some cases it would be higher, in some cases it would be kind of in the middle of that range. I think the other thing is you need to be clear on who's been allotted how much, because the one big thing that VCs will care about is how much of that pool has already been allotted, or verbally at least promised, right? You may not have a formal ESOP policy that's already laid out, and people may not have been given any formal communication. But if there has been some commitment made, then key employees, and you do want it clearly laid out, because what investors care about is what is the unallocated pool, because that's the pool that needs to be created for future employees and future key employees to be part of this company's journey. I think the third thing is, if things have been set up, it should have ideally been run through by a lawyer, because many people actually pick up documents and try and modify them. I
it's just bad practice because each ESOP policy is somewhat company specific. You do want to work with lawyer to make sure that you craft the policy right, and some people do it via trust, some people do it via just a pool. Struggle to speak some of the differences, but I think broadly, I think make sure it's documented. If it's not documented, that's fine. You can do it post Series A. Make sure there is a pool, and if people have been promised, then clearly lay out what has been already promised versus what is unallocated, because VCs would care about what is the unallocated.
And I think the most important part of that really is the part that the promising really. That's really what I think. Is that typically, once it's all said, everybody has a stock option agreement, you have a stock option plan. That's after everything's been done. It's usually more complex and just more contentious before that, right? Because again, I was promised a certain amount, right? So you're trying to recruit 5 engineers, and you're going to tell each one of them you're going to get X and Y, right? And so it's usually the quick fix is to give them some kind of offer letter, and then determine, okay, this is the kind of number we're talking about, right? And again, it's typically better to do it as a raw number as opposed to a percentage, because the percentage is always up for interpretation. That's not the best practice.
Another simple best practice is, especially at an early stage, in India, unfortunately, most people haven't yet begun to make enough money through ESOPs. I think that's going to change. I think we've begun to see some companies get really large and employees make meaningful money through ESOPs. So I'm very optimistic on that front. But at an early stage, the best way to communicate people who are joining the company is more in terms of the multiple of their compensation. Because most people think of it in terms of, hey, if I'm being paid, X in CTC, then, what is it in ESOP? So, and typically most people queue what is that amount linked to kind of the last round valuation. I see a lot of people saying, hey, you've been given out X percentage of the company, or you've been given, Y shares. Of course, an employee is going to ask, what is the worth value of these shares? And I find that the easiest way to communicate that is, what is that relative to your CTC? At an early stage, one is I think very generous, but not unheard of. As companies kind of grow, generally that number again tends to vary. Generally see that number kind of again similar in that range, because everyone's trying to kind of calculate how much of a multiple of this can I really earn over a period of time. So if I've been given say 20 lakhs of equity at a Series A stage, assuming that company goes on to become 100x of where it is today, assuming that the price per share doesn't go up 100x, but probably because of dilution it goes up say half of that, and that employee stands to make 50x on the value of the ESOP that they've been promised up front. So that's a huge number, right? And so it's always more important when you're communicating to people joining the company that hey, you're getting X lakhs or X worth of equity, and the future opportunity is this if the company achieves what it wants to achieve in terms of growth and valuations.
One more question.
There's one more.
When we shared this, there was started the issue converted debentures, which get converted 2 years to 5 years. So when we make it happen, we include convertible, it should get converted in the future period. So that what will be that dilution in the capital,
That's what we were talking about. If you remember that, I used the word fully diluted basis, fully diluted as converted basis, so that's exactly that, right? That you take that cap table or the convertible debenture as if it's been fully converted and allocate down the number of shares. Presumably you have some kind of a conversion ratio or something which determines the money is equivalent to this many shares. Right? So then you need to put that down in the cap table, sure. Right?
I think we have time for one more. Okay, one last one.
Hi, thanks. Both of you again. This is Akshat running a Fintech company called CapTable. One question which we grapple with is how do you incentivize advisors? Because how do you create an advisory pool in addition to the ESOP pool without creating a tax liability which is immediately applicable to these guys because they're not employees of the company?
Yeah, it's not common first of all, but where it's been done, I've seen advisors getting some allocation from the ESOP pool. It is carved out of the ESOP pool, although they're technically not employees. Then some of them end up spending some time advising the founder and there's a contractual agreement between them for a nominal fee that they earn as a result. So, but I've seen it really comes out of that ESOP pool.
No, that's a very good question. How do you incentivize advising to stay in your company, especially if they're busy people? In the US market, it's a little bit easier because you can allocate them shares, and I have seen that. And particularly through the discussions very early on, that they're almost quasi co-founders in a way because you can actually issue them very low price stock, for example, so they can buy the shares at a low price. But if they come in later, then you're right, it's very difficult at that point because now the valuation's gone up and you can't really issue the low price stock. So this is really the other way, some kind of ESOP, or in the US we even have what they call phantom ESOPs. That you basically kind of mock it, but basically it would be phantom in the sense that they will get paid out cash.
The fundamental issue is ESOP is for an employee, and if they are revising multiple companies, it's not possible, right?
That's right, and that's why I use the word phantom ESOP, right? So basically, to your point, it's a great solution, doesn't work for every situation, but you have a consulting agreement, right? And the phantom ESOP is that the person is going to get paid in cash a certain amount that would have been the equivalent of those shares upon a certain event, right? So it's like a consulting bonus, for example, right? So there's no shares, but we're going to give out this much cash, right?
Call options possible.
Well, I mean, call option is basically where you get to call the shares, right? I'm not sure.
It doesn't create a tax liability upfront.
Well, this is, when I'm talking about this phantom option, essentially, it's not really an option, right? It's basically a consulting agreement where somebody's going to get paid. They're going to have an income tax liability when they get paid. It shouldn't happen before that. So, yeah, I think, again, the term phantom, I'm using it in the US context, but I think it's the same thing. It's essentially a contract for consulting services, right? And you determine what the payout is. You're just paying them out. I think you can do that.
Listen, thank you everyone. Shantanu, thank you. You've been patient with all the questions that you had and
Another topic, which is fintech, and obviously very appropriate since our host is Barclays and fintech, so accelerator. So we have a great panel here in terms of fintech. Including the chair of Fintech, Sehgal in Mumbai, as well as other panelists who are very active in the Fintech sector. So I'll introduce the panelists here. Vinod Keni is who's here. He's from Venture Funds, and also a partner at Peachtree Management Advisors. And he has built and scaled many ventures successfully. He's also involved in TiE Atlanta and the global charter member, and as I mentioned, he's chair of the Fintech SIG, Special Interest Group of Mumbai. So special interest that. Rajesh Sehgal, Rajesh, founder partner of Panelists Investments. He's been a very prolific angel investor. Active member of the Angels also, and is chair of the Corporate Reporting Users Forum. He's a TiE board member, and also co-chairs, along with Vinod, the FinTech Special Interest Group. And this is very interesting, I didn't know this, he's a member of the steering committee of Axcom's 10,000 startups. So very impressive. This is Deepak Jain. Deepak is actually in the FinTech space himself, so direct experience in fintech. So he's the co-founder of Flexi Loans, so one of the leading digital lending platforms for small businesses. You can talk more about that. Flexi Loans is among the leaders in technology and alternate methods of scoring. So it was actually one of the topics I wanted to talk about in terms of methods for basic credit ratings, which I think is a big topic. And he's done a number of things before that. Those are my introductions. I think it would be helpful for each one of them. Anything I missed, if they could say a few words about what they want to say in terms of the background, their journey, and then we can kind of delve into really more of the fintech topics. So if you want to kind of give your background a bit as well.
So, fintech, of course, is the flavor of the month. probably the reason why we already have people around here. Fintech has been an interest of me, especially considering the fact that I'm always interested in looking at how technology can make delivery of finance a lot more smoother and can also sort of get into under-penetrated and underserved markets. So from that perspective, the investment opportunities in fintech and also sort of looking at entrepreneurial opportunities, especially what we call as fintech infrastructure, are of particular interest to me.
I think my background has been well covered by you, Shantanu, so nothing to add there. Fintech remains an area of interest, obviously, for all of us here. And I can share with you that some of my, my own learnings in the area of fintech have been in talking to entrepreneurs in this area and the questions that they ask. So I'm really looking forward to more, insightful business model related questions where we can all take back something from there.
Thanks. I run this startup called Flexi Loans. We focus on the SME loans pan India. 100% digital sourcing. With one office in Mumbai, we do loans in some 1,000 plus cities pan India. We've been at it for the last 3 years now. Just to add to my background, and given the topic is CapTable, before this almost for a decade I was in investment banking. So any questions you have on fundraising and having an advisor for a long period of time for this, I can answer this as well.
If you guys don't mind, I'm going to stand up. I'm just been sitting around all day. But anyway, you have a fantastic panel. As you all know, I'm from Silicon Valley, and so I come to India 3 times a year, and I do, the visits are spread out enough that I do see changes. That every time I come, there are incremental changes, and just some observations that I have based on what I see in the U.S. versus India. And it's not the case that the U.S. is frankly the most advanced place for a lot of this thing, despite what we might think. In the U.S., for example, there's no PIN numbers on credit cards. Every time I come to India, I get my credit card and they say, "What's your PIN number?" I say, "I don't have a PIN number." "How can you not have a PIN number? It's a U.S. credit card. We don't have PIN numbers." And part of that is actually the merchants don't want to give a PIN number, right? Because the public will be confused. So goes the argument. If I have to remember a PIN number, I'm just not going to use the credit card, right? Now, clearly that's not the case because in every other country except for the U.S., including Europe, people use PIN numbers. But the belief is the American public will not be able to formulate a PIN number in order to a credit card. So therefore, no credit cards in the U.S. have PIN numbers. And typically they don't even have a photo on it. And so you wonder, in terms of the fraudulent element, here, I think, this is all designed to lessen fraud, right? Now, in the U.S., one of the good things I think you've experienced in the U.S. is that fraud protection is actually pretty good. I mean, if you have a problem in the U.S. and you call your credit card company, report it, you're off the hook, pretty much. They will take care of it. And I think they've taken a conscious decision that we will live with the fraud. 1 or 2% fraud is okay in order for people to spend more money. So that's the conscious decision. Now, in India, maybe you can tell me the examples that the idea is that actually you're on the hook if there's fraud. The credit card company or any other company will not come to your rescue. That's one key difference in the U.S. and therefore you have these PIN numbers in the U.S. The other thing in the U.S. is we still use checks. You would be amazed to see the checks, the wires. Every time you send a wire, it's $25. I mean, it's absurd, right? So, for example, I'll give you an example. We just related to CapTables. When we formulate a company, we typically start with a very low share of price, $100. Let's say the entire capital of the company is $100. Let's say, right? And typically, a founder has to put in $30 worth of capital, right? For him to wire that costs $25. To wire to get $35, right? And often we see it in India where somebody wants to wire the money and how the bank calls you, you realize you're going to spend $25 to wire $30, right? So how does this make any sense? So there is a case that we have in the U.S. It's not necessarily the most advanced system in the world. I would expect probably China is probably a better example than the U.S. in many ways, where frankly everything is moved away from cash. Really, it's much more. And if you've been to China, you can see that it's all Alipay and different types of payment systems, electronic payment systems, where then we can talk to the panelists about, I guess that's my question is, one of the things, clearly in the US, we saw this demonetization, it was a huge thing, and it made headlines, and I get asked, during the time I got asked a lot of questions, because I think even Americans found it remarkable that you wake up one day and suddenly your cash is not worth anything. I mean, that's an amazing concept for anybody, any country. And so I have to explain to people, that it's a cash-based society, right? Now, the interesting thing is in the U.S. is people use the word cash very casually. So I was, buying a house in the U.S. and my real estate broker agent said, "Okay, are you going to be paying cash?" And I suddenly stopped and I said, "What are you talking? Do not talk like that. You cannot say that word." Because I've been in India for a few years. And for him, cash simply meant that you were not going to get a mortgage. It didn't mean that you're going to walk into a suitcase full of cash, right? And the funny thing in India is that I had to explain to him, I said, "Don't say that, because in the Indian context, cash means you're walking into a suitcase full of cash." He said, "No, I had no idea. I just simply meant you're not going to take a mortgage, you're not the money, right?" And so there's this concept of cash was and is a very important part of the economy here, and demonetization was against that. So that's one of my questions here is when does India move to a cashless society? And again, even in the US, we're not there yet.
So, if you want my honest opinion, I don't think we will ever get into that cashless society. I think, culturally, we're so much used to sort of holding on to things or at least touching and feeling them physically. I sort of heard this very recently that despite demonetization, that, now a lot of transactions and a lot of businesses are still now starting to slowly move back towards a lot of cash-based transactions. In spite of, a whole bunch of regulatory issues around it. So the point is that I don't think we will ever become a truly cashless society.
Maybe put out the what
So, valid point. I don't know if you all realize, but it's been nearly 3 years since demonetization, and most of us will experience that cash is back to normalcy. If you look at RBI numbers, the cash in circulation now is more than what it was before demonetization. So it's back and kicking, right? How many of you bought a house recently? Oh, we don't need to answer. Was there cash involved? There you go. Be so honest about it, yes. It's back. So, cashless India. I'll try. So, here, this is my experience. I was in a corner of India a fortnight ago, or in a place called Imphal, right? You can't even understand how that economy of that city will work without cash. It will not. So when we say India is going to be cashless, I think we need to define which part of India we're talking about. Is it the metro cities where you and I transact? And I always repeat that you and I, people here, we are a small sliver of what India actually is. So cashless India, I think, is a pipe dream. It's very cultural as well, like you said. So it is cultural. We will have to deal with this duality as in everything else in life. There will be cashless. Parts of our ecosystem will get cashless, but a lot of cash will remain.
Okay. So I'll add a couple of different perspectives to cashless India or how the digitalization is all happening in India. While I completely agree with the other two co-panelists that cashless in India, India will completely cashless is not that going to happen. But is India moving towards more formalization? Definitely yes. So we get into merchants and we are one of the largest lenders for various POS-based ecosystems in India. And we do like thousands of loans on those ecosystems. So we have data of various categories of merchants using credit cards and pre-demon and post-demon. Those numbers spiked up almost 2x. Like the percentage of sales for a merchant happening via credit cards almost 2x. It has again come back, but it's not completely like it's not reduced to where it was before. So there's definitely improvement there. The methods of movement of payments are also changing. So for example, UPI is a complete game changer and how easy it is to transfer money to anybody. It's definitely one of the best systems we can probably say as Indians that we created. The the third and major change is the way these traders are borrowing now. For 3 to 6 months, when they want loan, they don't want to go to their cousins and within their ecosystems. Or they are more open to go to fintechs or anybody who's making the process of loan application simpler and faster. With those kind of methods, people are borrowing more and more from fintechs. So almost 50% of our base of borrowers have taken up business loan for the first time. Like they have taken credit cards, they have taken home loans. They never used to borrow for business loans, but now they are borrowing for business loans. So that's definitely a formalization.
One of the things I've seen about sort of moving to cashless is actually younger people are more in favor of moving to cashless. And I've seen this in other countries. If you're talking millennials in the US and younger, they're more into the cashless. Older generation are still more comfortable with cash. And in China, it's probably very similar. So in India, when you say there's still a cash culture, is it still going to be that older generation are still more cash oriented, or doesn't matter about the ages? It's always going to be cash.
It's not just about the older generation, by the way. I mean, if you are 20 something, you don't want to deal with cash, but if you move out of your house and you want to lead a normal life, you will have to pay the rickshaw guy with cash, or the taxi, or lots of things. You need cash. How many people in this room don't have any cash? And this is like a sliver of India society I'm talking about, right? How many of us here have no cash in your pockets now? That's the answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, the US, you walk around with $5 or $10 in your pocket, you don't really need cash for anything, really. Anymore. And certainly in China, you don't need cash at all, pretty much now. I mean, one interesting point that Deepak made, and I think it's true, is that I'm very impressed by the ability to transfer money. It's almost free.
With the different bank, RTGS, NEFT, IMPS that I've seen in the banks, it's incredible and it's instant. And frankly, it's far superior to what I've seen anything in the US. Where again, they have wire transfer costs you $25 and it takes 3 days. So it's actually kind of antiquated in many ways. The entire US system is also ripe for disruption in many ways. And I wanted to talk about one or two other things. One was about, I see a lot of sort of alternate lending, and we see this in the US too, but in terms of different ways of getting cash out there, right? So in terms of, and related to this is the credit score, right? So I'd like some of the panelists to talk about ways of credit scoring, and I see this in the market. People will look at their social score, social media, and see if you're posting on Facebook or whatever, and somehow you can derive a credit score based on that, or based on what your community is saying. That's another way of doing it. Everything now is so credit score driven, and this is also particularly true in the US. But it doesn't work for everybody, because not everybody, frankly, has that capacity to have that credit score. Either they're sort of a freelancer, and so their income might be irregular in some way, or they're younger, or they're in the US you have people who have arrived from other countries as immigrants and they don't have a credit score, or they're students, they don't have a credit score. So there are lots of people who fit outside that boundary of your typical salaried worker who has a 3-year job history and you can easily derive a credit score. So for everybody else, how do you manage that? And I think the other question was, all these alternate lending, money's going out. How does the money come back in? I mean, we've seen all these NPAs in India, and I don't know, talk about fintechs and NPAs, and clearly you're giving money out, you want the money back. So how does that work?
So, again, for fintechs or lenders specifically, NBFC, for us, the CS is not complete. When you find a customer and you convince them to take a loan from us, that's the easier part. The sales is complete only when your money is back along with the interest, and the sales cycle is much longer than normal. But to answer
you have two VCs here. Our business is similar. very easy to give money, but the sale is not complete till it comes back.
The deal is not done till the money comes back.
Now the LPs are asking very kind of questions. So let me break your question into two parts. And first is whether there is credit score or trade of data in India. That has increased significantly from the time even we started the company. 3 years back, the trade most consumers or most entrepreneurs left on the web was much lesser than what it is today. So thus there is more and more alternative data beyond credit scores for us to look at a customer. For example, we are again debit lenders for Flipkart. So for the sellers who selling to those ecosystem now. So there again there is a lot of trade available for us. The kind of goods he's selling, what's the GMAs, what the cancellations, etc., for us to take a decision beyond what his bank statements may tell us, and may not need bank statements also if we have scorecards to that extent. So there is a definite trade coming. The second part is how potent are the credit scores? In the US, credit scores are very potent because you need those scores beyond loans as well. When you buy a flat or you're renting an apartment, your credit score is asked for. It's not the norm in India. In India, your credit scores are required or looked at, your bureau scores are looked at only when you're taking the loan. So if there is a mechanism, or in the future the mechanisms come in wherein these scores are required for normal day-to-day lives, I think so credit scores can become a potent source for lending as much as it is.
Great. One of the things just as I mentioned, I come to India, every so often, so I see different trends. When I was here earlier, one of the big things was micro lending was a very big thing, whether it was Running Bank or there were 10 other players like that. So I hear much less about that now. So I'm just curious, has that been replaced now by the alternate lending, or is that just more, okay, that's a rural area thing, and now you're targeting urban sector?
Yeah, so microfinance is even more small. It's at, I would say, loan ticket size of 25,000, and it's more cluster-based approach. I've done a lot of IPOs in the microfinance space. The gap we fill in is working capital needs, but it goes from say 50,000 rupees to almost 50 lakhs. So we can write larger checks, and we do write larger checks as well. But yeah, it's a different segment. Microfinance still exists, and there are a lot of small finance banks. In fact, a lot of microfinance institutions have been converted into small finance. It's a huge market.
Yeah, it's alive and kicking. It's absolutely essential, and I think taking from Deepak's point earlier, that there's formalization that's happening, and the level of formalization in the economy is going up for sure, and therefore, credit scores, we don't have a FICO equivalent, but similarly, credit scores are available. People have access to finance. This whole UPI thing is, so a lot of data is available. There's a lot of traceability, a lot of track record that people are giving knowingly and unknowingly. I think the way, at least I look at this whole microfinance, SME loans, and then the banking, the formal banking system is, there are two, so you want to divide that into two parts. One is that part of this business, the micro loans and the SME loans, which banks had access to but refused to finance, right? In their own wisdom that, okay, this is not good to lend to. And then there's the other part where banks didn't have access to, right? Or weren't able to access and finance those banks. So I think as long as companies business like yours or microfinance business are dealing with this part of their ecosystem, where banks, didn't have the reach or the wherewithal or the cost to service that small borrower was just way too high because of lack of technology and access that the way they did banking through branch banking. I think it's all great, but a lot of obstacles, a lot of problems will come up if you try to access the other one. So microfinance, SME loans, smaller alternate mechanisms of lending are all I think alive and kicking, and they are essential to this broad GDP growth targets that the Prime Minister has laid out. Formalization of this economy has to come.
Okay. Chris, what did we? Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
So in the previous avatar, I did a fair amount of investing in microfinance, right? And compared to that, and look at small business financing and small ticket loans, personal loans. I don't think microfinance has sort of shrunk. I think, like Rajesh was saying, it's still alive and kicking. In spite of a whole slew of microfinance and other sort of lending mechanisms that were sort of focused on this market that was sort of underserved, that market still exists, and that market is largely underserved as of yet. So even though a lot of entrepreneurs and fintechs businesses are sort of still focused on larger cities and probably even larger towns, the opportunity to sort of look at underserved markets, especially rural areas, and especially the ability for you to sort of leverage a whole bunch of technologies that are now available still exists, and it's a fairly large market. The challenge is, how do I really sort of go and address that market? And two, how do I really sort of make sure that, that market sort of is going to continue to sort of not only be large enough, but also sort of starts getting a little bit more sophisticated. The formalization of that economy, especially the rural economy, all of that is actually good steps in that direction, right? And more people there are now aware of financial products and the need for them to start accessing a lot of those financial products. But the point is, I think that opportunity is very large and still exists for people who still want to sort of just be able to sort of build businesses around that.
One of the interesting things about India is I see kind of two market segments. One is, as we just talked about on the panelists, it's a huge country, $1 billion+ population, many underserved, unbanked, and a lot of the microfinance or some of these other sectors are to address that large audience. But there's also sort of a granular sort of sector, which I think is also being addressed also, and I see some of these same business models that I saw in the US, for example, coming to India now. So just some examples that I see just in the market. For example, robo-advisors that you see a lot. There's a company in the US called Management, which kind of pioneered this sort of robo-advisors, and a lot of millennials are kind of moving away from financial advisors and paying 1.5% of your assets every year to a financial advisor who's saying, this could all be done by algorithms. And I think there's a movement towards this sort of robo-advisory, and I think in India also there are a number of companies doing robo-advisory. That's, maybe the super wealthy will not, they want more of a personal touch. But sort of the mass market or mass affluent market, there's a sector, particularly the younger generation, that would be happy to go with robo-advisors. And I think the other sort of interesting things I see is there was you all know about credit, which I saw raise a large amount of money, and I think they are also looking at sort of a very niche segment in terms of people who have credit cards and high-end users of credit cards and then using loyalty around credit cards. And so that again is a very sort of top end of the market around fintech. And another area that is really interesting in, any of you have been to Silicon Valley, I don't know, but one of the interesting things when you land in Silicon Valley is all the ads are for tech companies. That's pretty much all the ads are for. It's quite interesting that it's when somebody remarked to me that all the ads are for tech companies selling things to other tech companies. And so it's basically this round circle that startups selling to other startups. And it's not really addressing the consumer, it's about VMware selling to some other company, right? And so it's very niche and very specific. And one of the things that's come out of most recently is a credit card for startups, which I thought was a very unique thing. It's called Brex. If you can look it up, BREX, valued at $1.5 billion in the last years. And I was at TiE Global Summit in Delhi a few days ago, and I met somebody who was doing the exact same model. And it's the same issue in India that the startups in here also have an issue with credit, because same thing, just like a person, they also don't have much of a track record, right? They haven't raised a lot of money, and so you're kind of creating now an ecosystem of startups who can have some kind of a credit card or lending platform for startups as well. So maybe I'd like to just talk about, sort of, maybe this is the last topic, is sort of, we talked about the mass market, and now some of these themes that I brought up, robo-advisors or sort of high-end card penetration or Brex, some of these top-end fintech models. And I don't know if you covered this in your SIG group or anything else that you guys can talk about in the Mumbai SIG group, fintech SIG group.
So I think, so till up to 2014, 2015, we saw a lot of emulation of what worked in the US, let's do it again. But I think over the last 3-4 years, people have realized, both VC investors as well as entrepreneurs have realized the pitfalls of having that approach. So we've seen a lot more innovation, but this innovation is not cutting edge global innovation that happens in the Silicon Valley or Israel, etc. But we've seen a lot more local innovation. So you will have this guy, and I don't know, model, who's doing this credit cards for startups. Until and unless it brings in that local flavor of what Indian startups and Indian entrepreneurs want and need and what are the realities here, simple emulation may not work. And that goes for robo-advisory as well. So you mentioned Betterment. We have one fintech in our portfolio called Surpure. And even though it remains a model that is similar to something else running in the US and UK, they've brought in a lot of customization which works only in the Indian context. It's a model where for every spend that you do on your digital, using a credit card or UPI, etc., essentially whenever you get an SMS from your bank saying, okay, you spend this much money, they're going to round it up to the next figure and pull that money out of your bank account to save for you. Right? So, but it has to be done in a very localized kind of way you go about it. So all the models that you mentioned, the good news is we are a large market. We are very consumerist in our approach now, and there is a scalable business to be built across all verticals within the fintech domain, whether it's lending or it's pick up insurance, investing, savings, payments, general banking, all across. So we will see leaders emerge in all these models, and they will be similar to what we see now in China or US or other developed markets. But they will all have, in my opinion, a local flavor.
So, to add to what Rajesh was saying, I think, a lot of this exists in some way or fashion in India, but a lot of them sort of also realize that I can't just bring a sort of an idea from somewhere that it worked somewhere else and sort of plug it here in India. Because, the way we sort of treat money culturally is also very different, right? So, from that perspective, the way we save, the way we sort of look at money, the way we sort of handle money, all of that is very different from the way the West looks at it, right? And having lived there in the US and then having moved here, I sort of can see that differences and the way people sort of treat money as well. So from that perspective, all of this has to sort of be able to sort of adapt and be able to keep going back to this to, what we call as Bharat, right? The rest of India, which is outside of the metros, outside of tier 1 towns and tier 2 towns as well, right? Which is where the large demand exists and where the large market also exists. If you sort of have to start looking at products and services for that particular segment, where you can actually build really big businesses, then the innovation has to sort of also sort of take into consideration customization and some of these cultural issues that sort of are fairly important in the way people sort of look at money.
Beyond customizations, also very critical thing for markets like India is regulators. So if you're bringing an idea from there, please spend a lot of time in researching. For example, the government before we gave our first almost 6 to 8 months went into looking at various models, exploring various models, and then looking at the regulation side as well. I'm a big fan of B2B lending. Honestly, that's how lending should be done. But in India, if you look at the way most of us, we will not trust a startup to give our loans on the supply side. Second, the customization solution. Second, the regulation is still clear. So you have to customize it and also look at the regulators before you bring an idea from there.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. The regulatory issues, I guess, good and bad, right? Because in some ways, India, in my view, actually is ahead. I gave some examples where I think it's actually ahead of the US. In some ways, I think the government has also shut itself off. Blockchain, Bitcoin being one clear example, where I think they pretty much decided not to participate in that. Maybe they'll change their view later on. I think China's going full stream. US is sort of, I think, a confused place. They're not really, the SEC hasn't said anything on the blockchain Bitcoin, but they've not really said no either. So it's kind of still kind of developing at its own pace. I guess the last quick topic was on neobanks, which is really digital banks, and I think there's a lot of action and excitement in that. And even if you look at other international examples, they're only taken because I think they're slightly ahead. In Europe, for example, I think it's probably even ahead of the US in terms of neobanks. You have Revolut, you have N20, in UK you have N26, In Germany, you have a company called Monzo. In the UK, and these are multi-billion-dollar companies, only set up in the last few years. But really, again, the millennial generation is leading this. Why do I need to go into a branch, and what am I going to do there? Who do I need to meet? I can do this on an app entirely from my phone. So I don't need this branch network. And again, that may play out in India, but maybe India is also a higher touch place. A lot of people want that branch, and maybe people could have some talk about, would it work in India, and who's it going to attract? People want to go to their branch. I went to a bank today, and believe me, there are lots of people milling around at a branch, even today. So you don't want to go through all do it.
So because I see a lot of people here in North Korea, I see a few people here with grey hair. I presume you have gone to a bank branch at some point in time just to update your passport.
KYC, another issue. Keep doing your KYC.
Yeah, KYC is still like, yeah. You know, there used to be something called a passport. Police officer had handled a passport and gone to a bank, stood in the queue, you know, and the line printer would like cheat, print your just to know the balance. Yeah. Right? So I think we've come a long way from there. But let me ask a follow-on question to you. How many of you have visited a bank branch this month? For banking? Yeah, for banking. For regular banking. Right, so 3, 4. So we still go to a bank branch, right? And this is like, please remember, this is that sliver of society which is very amenable to technology. We understand technology, we know all that. But I'm sure you didn't go out of, because I have a lot of time, let's go to a bank branch. You had to, right? And therefore you found yourself in a bank branch. So I think we are far away from this neo-banks or this digital banks, let's call them, to be very prevalent. Of course, there is a market for all these, digital banks, etc. But normal banking, I mean, I bank with Citibank, HDFC, I don't know, you guys bank with other banks. More or less regular banking, you really don't need to go to a bank branch. You can get it done on the mobile. And you don't have to be really banking with Citibank. You can be banking with State Bank. And you still don't have to go to a bank branch for regular banking. So that's bulk of business for a bank is regular banking. Right? From a retail banking perspective, forget the corporate bank. And for that, you really don't need to go to a bank branch. And India, to your point, you have a very valid point. It's a very highly regulated market. You made the point about that PIN for every credit card transaction. So you need two-factor authentication for any transaction that you do, because the regulator is so very conservative. Says, I don't want to deal with the mess that Indians can create. So let me not allow them to create the mess in the first place. Right? So that's the approach. So digital banks, in addition to your regular banks, private and public sector both. You have small finance banks now. You have microfinance companies. You have NBFCs. So the number of entities that the Reserve Bank now regulates is anyway, I think adequate enough to be able to provide you what you want. Is there anyone here who banks with DBS? How's your experience? If you could share with all of us.
Right. So my experience with DBS has been pretty average. They kind of, the way they wanted to get you into it was asking you to invest a certain amount of money into mutual funds. So that's something easy to do. You don't have to go to a bank to do that. You trust the guy who comes to you, so you open the account for you, they open your demat account, and you make your payment. The other which they give you is that it's a connect to Singapore. So fine, you still might say I can open a mutual fund. The next fund I can buy from anywhere, right? So I'll buy through DBS. Now beyond that, the fact that they don't have a brick and mortar branch, I think has affected them in a big way, because it seems like the relationship managers work from home or somewhere, and that kind of affects their professionalism. It shouldn't, but it does affect their professionalism in terms of the work hours, the relationship managers interacting with you, the ways that it's interacting with you. Maybe the solution would have been for them to work from a co-working space like RISE rather than letting the professionals work from home. So my relationship with them has not moved beyond the two investments that I've made.
I'm not going to see DBS working out of a Barclays facility. So there you go. It's a bank whose positioning is digital bank. They call themselves a digital bank. That's the pitch. But I don't bank with them, so I don't have any first-hand experience. But from your experience, they're far away from being completely digital. So is there a logic and a business proposition for a digital bank in India? Of course, there is. But I really fail to see why normal regular banks can't be that.
I'll try and answer that why, to some extent. It's again very simple. I think so when you started, you said that, one of the panelists said that on the lending side, you said on the lending side, as long as the fintechs are focusing on the areas where banks are not, on the distribution side, there is enough in the markets there, and they need to be focused on those markets and solve using technology what banks have not been able to do without a branch, and the whole branching economics. Similarly, on the asset side as well, there are a lot of services where the distribution network does not exist in tier 2, tier 3 towns. And the focus for most of these new banks is to first try and acquire customers for those services. And at some point in time, they may apply for a digital banking license and eventually lend to those customers as well. So it's an acquisition strategy right now, taking distribution to areas, I think, where banks do not reach with those services.
Fair point. I completely agree with that. That's why I said there is a place for having these banks for now. But I said in the long run, I don't see why even a state bank or take ICICI or HDFC can't compete away that market for a digital. So because banks in India or we Indians are very comfortable with technology, and as consumers, but even as enterprises, we are very, very open to using new technology, etc. Look at the banks. As you said in your opening remark, right? The Indian Fintech ecosystem, which includes regular banks using technology, is really up there. It's not lagging far behind.
I would counter that one thing though, is that there's a coolness factor too. I don't know if you talked about it, but people want to use Revolut or Monza or N26. That's cool. SBI is not that cool. It's everywhere, but it's not that cool. So I don't know. At least in the West, the coolness factor is the other two.
So one is cooler, and another is, once you acquire those customers, can you have a hook enough to maintain them? It's up to the new banks to now that, as they acquire the customers, keep on providing some services to ensure that these banks do acquire the customers. It's like, for example, most of us fintechs go to use credit and give loans, first loans to them, and the banks can acquire these customers from us. We have to keep on innovating on giving our customers those services so that those customers keep on coming back to us. In the last 3 years at Flexi, on an average, we give 3 loans to each of our customers. And that shows that the customer is coming back again and again, even though most of them are.
So, to sort of take off on where you talked about DBS. DBS now has physical branches. Because they sort of got a full banking license, which is assuming they had to put branches in. Otherwise, the banking license would be taken away, and for them, it was too expensive to sort of have a license and not really open a branch. Now, how they're doing, I have no idea. Other than the fact I know that they've gone and created them, but I think they actually had to go and create these physical branches also, not in Bombay, but in smaller towns. And they had to actually go and create them in Ahmednagar or not even Nashik. How well they're done, I have no idea. But that's the plan that they're sort of going with.
So to add to what you said, right? So I have bank accounts with Standard Chartered, I think they are and there's no real, in fact, I prefer those, and I see nothing digital or more innovative about DBS, vis-a-vis Standard Chartered or IDBI, who are both equally or even better when it comes to their technology interface or UX and their app.
That's one thing I think India is missing still when we talk about India. But the Western models go down. I mean, the reason why people want to use a Revolut or a Monza is the UX. The user experience is amazing and it's cool.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason. So maybe DBS isn't cool enough.
So when they came across with Singapore as a big part of their pitch, and it was a nice logo. But beyond that, there was nothing added when it comes to culture, brand, marketing.
There's a room for somebody to develop that.
The question was marketing, I think. Branding and marketing.
So, I think, if you start looking at some of these what we call challenger banks, right? These neo banks that are sort of sprouting everywhere. I think for them to ultimately sort of continue to sort of stay relevant, or for them to sort of really become really big, is what kind of innovation is sort of coming out of these, apart from the traditional products that are already out there. Because if you sort of look at it, like Rajesh is saying, why not State Bank? Right? And State Bank and Canara Bank and Syndicate Bank and all these banks are everywhere. They're ubiquitous. So from that perspective, what is the new thing that they sort of bring to the table other than the coolness factor? And is that something that our millennials and our India's younger generation still sort of want to really look at it from that perspective, sort of saying being cool, or say, no, I'm going to go to a trusted State Bank of India because I trust it, because my father and my grandfather trust it.
Well, the devil's advocate is the best thing is for SBI to buy a cool bank, right? And that's if you ask, that's what's going to happen in the U.S. Citibank and JP Morgan are going to buy these banks because they will retain that cool brand, but that's just the easy way out.
But in India, I think it's going to take a while before that happens, because I think culturally, the mindset that you would probably see in a traditional bank is going to be very, very different from what you probably see even in microfinance. I mean, even Deepak tomorrow sort of going and saying, hey, I'm going to go and start working with State Bank of India. It's going to be like a fish out of water for some time. I mean, so culturally, it's a bit of a challenge, right? And that mindset will probably have to change. And of course, there's the whole regulatory aspect as well, as to whether RBI is going to say, well, these guys are not really doing well, or they're doing well, but then I'm going to allow you, State Bank of India, to go and buy XYZ. So I think, from that perspective, the opportunity exists, but how innovative can they be to sort of address the needs or the wants that India has beyond just the coolness factor.
Let me deliberate on this innovation part. So, do we have fintech entrepreneurs here? To run fintech in one form or the other. And who's your primary customer? Is it B2C or B2B? B2B. B2B. So this is not any, I'm not surprised. Now, if the innovation in India is going to work for another bank, because all these guys are selling to banks, I really fail to see how a neo bank is going to go and compete with these banks. Because that bank is already having the technology that we are talking often, all this innovative models, etc. So one of my pet peeve with all fintech entrepreneurs, sorry, I'm going to say it loud now, it has always been, you got to innovate and be brave enough to go compete with these incumbents. If our innovation, horsepower is going to just accelerate their machine, then those guys will survive, and SBI will survive. We will have to beat them.
It's also the capital. It's also the capital ecosystem in India versus the US, right? In India, there is not enough risk capital available for entrepreneurs. While I raised a large amount and you were very small, but it's not enough. So you need much larger pools of capital coming to startups for them to take on the incumbents. So the largest lending startup in India, all they have raised is 50 million, 200 million. Yeah, that's nothing. You can't take SBI unless you have $1 billion+ in your net worth and then enough liability side at 8-9% to go out and lend at those rates similar to an SBI and HDFC. So that will happen with time. Or the startups where
always from a lending lens. I agree with you. I am not even on this point. If you want to compete with the state banks or private banks on lending, of course you need billions and billions of dollars to fund. Right? But innovation is not about getting into the lending business. It's about innovating something that competes away the advantage of capital base. Can we do something to make capital, large capital balance sheets actually a weakness? I mean, are we even thinking on those lines? When a betterment started in the US, right? Of course, there is a lot of capital, etc. later on. But the whole premise of the business was not that, okay, I'm going to do this for Citibank or for a JP Morgan or for some other bank. Right? Are we even thinking, and the point I'm trying to make is not that we can compete, are we even as entrepreneurs thinking of competing against these big guys without the capital? And it's not restricted, by the way, just to banking and fintech, etc. The Indian ecosystem itself, the early stage ecosystem itself, is deprived of capital. You talk to a health tech company, consumer tech company, retail tech company, IoT, just go across. Capital nahi hai India mein boss. We are a poor country. Let's acknowledge that. We are a poor country. We will remain a poor country. So what? Do we stop innovation? No. We have to figure out ways and means around it.
It's a fair point. In fact, most entrepreneurs in India think of, okay, how will I earn the first time? Versus what problem will solve and then get enough customers and then think of their survival.
That's really, we probably want to wrap it up. Any questions?
So you mentioned fintech as an example where fintech is competing with banks, right? Engaged fintech companies. So do you think fintech companies should be more focused? That's what I would think. There are so many fintech companies on actually selling products and services, right? So if a fintech company is able to sell products and services using data that they've collected, that is something millennials would be interested. So maybe Cred is kind of doing that, right? Where Cred is actually building a user base of consumers, which could then get converted into people who start banking with them. And maybe the way ahead for fintech companies is to actually tie up with brands and consumer companies and use their data to target their consumers with giving these products which are exclusively available or with credit to them, and thereby building that trust and then converting them to bank accounts.
A lot of companies like Bazaar, Bazaar are already doing it.
Yeah, but that's just insurance products, for example. So I'm saying it's
So they're now in the Bazaar, for example, as lending through Bazaar.
it could be even selling like clothes and shoes and cars and
Which the happy the other way now. In fact, a lot of ecosystems are coming into lending, and that's a new buzzword.
So do you know the genesis of NBFCs in India? You had banks everywhere, right? Why do you need non-banking finance companies? Right? So somewhere the regulators realized that just having banks is not going to suffice. You need distribution. The problem that you mentioned in the beginning. You need distribution into areas, business areas as well as geographical areas where banks don't have a presence. Because there's a limited capacity banks can have. And that is how NBFCs were born. And then they took a form and shape of their own in the early 90s, etc. Followed obviously like in India we do with the big crash in the mid 90s, and then they reinvented their whole model. And the biggest NBFC today, Bajaj, right? They came from nowhere. And they essentially their balance sheet is full of money from the banks. Right? That's the source of capital that they have. And are they competing with banks or not? Of course they're competing with every bank. They are bigger, their balance sheet is bigger than banks. So there is the path that you mentioned, it's the path today. You have to have some hook. You have to go in and get a customer one way or the other. And then you start giving that customer a lot of things. That doesn't mean that if you become the size of Bajaj Finance and you have a few NBFCs of that size, it doesn't mean the banks are going to just watch. Because remember the regulator is in my opinion biased. So it's tough. It's tough to set up a large business and manage.
I think Rajesh, also the hook to that was like Bajaj was selling bikes and it already had a lot of customer data linking back to that, and the same story is repeated in the case of Mahindra Finance. Two tractors are very tightly integrated with the rural ecosystem, and hence today as for rural customer, they lend even to buy a motor along with a tractor protection. So I think that
even if you look at Shriram Finance for that matter. So Shriram Finance primarily came from distribution of trucks, and that's how they became one of the largest, right? So to go back to what you're saying, a lot of this will ultimately end up being partnerships because see, they all have to coexist. And I think a lot of the banks also sort of realize that one way for them to not only coexist but also continue to innovate and be relevant, especially for the younger generation, is to start getting into these partnerships. Right? And some of them will probably happen begrudgingly, or some of them will probably have to be sort of dragged into this kicking and screaming. But they will happen. And some of them will sort of happen, some of them may be forced through by regulators. We don't know at this point. But going back here, I mean, the regulators tend to be, our regulators are extremely conservative for obvious reasons. I mean, look at the messes we have in our banking systems around, right? You sort of read them and you sort of feel like I don't want to really read economic times in the morning. But the point is, there's also a reason why the regulators are also trying to be stimulus.
And maybe that's why CapTable point was we hope that fintech companies actually get onto the CapTable of consumer companies or FMCG companies and products and their products like you mentioned, right? Mahindra tractors, they might get data.
Mahindra and Bajaj both.
Right? They might get data on millennials in cities. Will be really
Should we wrap it up?